Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Professor Wayne. As I promised, we're back with case study number 2. Treasure research. This time we're going to focus on some beach hunting tips. I had posted some information on our Facebook group, Treasure Hunting, and I said I would follow up with a case study analysis of that. So that's what this is about. And I've added a few new slides to make it interesting, add a little more to it. So let's get started. This is a friend of mine, Beach Gamechanger. This is his finds this year so far. This is over a month ago, in fact, and he's already been killing it. And he does a lot of good services. What he does is he works for ring finders. So when people lose stuff, he finds it for them. But he also gets a fair number of natural finds too. And this is something that he shared with me, 40 years of rings. And he bought a Porsche. So you can see his Porsche, the dream car. And that picture on the left is all the rings. Amazing guy, very generous, contributed a lot to our hunt. It was an amazing person and a great beach detectorist and a game changer of them at the max. So let's talk about this. This is the post that I put up on the Facebook group. And I had seen this somewhere else and I had said, well, let's expand this and talk about it. And we've got 6 identified areas here. And the question that I posted to my group was, if you had limited amount of time, of the 6 areas, where would you spend most of your time? And it was interesting because everyone had like a different opinion what they would do. And I think we're going to go through it. And the author of this, the original author, had some ideas. And our group had some great ideas too. So let's talk about it. There's no right or wrong. It's what works for you. I mean, in any one of these 6 areas, you could find a treasure. But when you have limited time, the idea is, what can you do to increase your chances? And one person made a point about this, and I'll get to it later, is that if he had a choice here, he wouldn't be in the dry sand at all. He'd be over in the water or on the wet sand. And I will talk about that as we go through. We get some slides just about that. So here we go. Let's get started. So the first one, the towel line. Look at where people typically lay out their blankets. So it's a good idea to go on a busy day when you can scope out the beach, see where people are sitting, see where they're laying. I've done that before in a beach near me. And it's funny because it actually worked. I saw a bunch of young kids, teenagers, they were fooling around on one end of the beach and they were sitting and playing. And I said, there's got to be something there later on. And lo and behold, afterwards, when I went, I got some coins and I actually got a silver ring too. So where they lay is where they're mostly going to be playing. They sit, they lay around, they turn around, they lose stuff off their blankets. So that towel line, definitely something to check out. And in order to see it, it's a good idea to go when the beach is at the busiest time. You can see where people put up their stuff. Second one over on the right-hand side, the volleyball courts, the basketball courts. I included 2 and 3 together because they're both sports. They're sports areas. And you have people sitting there watching. You can't see it real well, but there's actually volleyball courts there too. So you have people jumping, playing around. They're sweating. They're diving into the sand. Their hands are in the sand. If they're wearing any kind of jewelry, or whether it's necklaces or earrings or rings, coins in their pocket, if they have pockets, that's going to fall out. With the basketball court, I found a lot of times you'll find things along the perimeter. Obviously, you can't detect the court. It's a hard court. But you look at where people sit around the court. Where do they pile up their clothes? Where do they put their bags? With that kind of a thing. That's where you're going to more apt to see it and find stuff. So 2 and 3 together, the volleyball and the basketball area is definitely something worth checking out. One of our members said that she has a lot of success at the volleyball course, and that was her first choice. Next one was over at the entrance exit areas, the bathrooms. They always have potential to have things fall out, coming and going. Running to the bathroom, running back, hands might be wet, things could fall off, carrying a bunch of bags with your chairs, and you leave things in your chairs and they fall out, bags open up and spill. Been a lot of success near the entrances and the exit area when people are getting excited to get on the beach and also excited to get off the beach. Always a good thing to check out. The open area, the author of this actually felt that this was kind of hit or miss. Now, I'm not saying don't do it, but if you had a limited amount of time, that's probably the one that you're not going to spend a whole lot of time on. Things can be lost and you'll find stuff. I found stuff in open areas, but the odds are less. If there's no activity making the deposits for you, then it really is kind of a hit or miss event. But if you have the time, there's nothing wrong with it. People walk it, they sit, they play. You never know. So I wouldn't rule it out totally, but it wouldn't be my first choice. And then the picnic area, that's not as easy digging. As you know, this is grass, it's soil. That might be sandy soil, but you're not going to use your beach scoop. You're probably going to be using a little shovel. Often littered, especially if it's a picnic area, you got pull tabs everywhere, garbage everywhere. So if you can tolerate the garbage, you can pick through the garbage, you'll find coins, occasionally jewelry, but you'll find coins. We've done a lot of success around the picnic areas. But again, it's just what you're into. It's a busy area. It's probably going to be early morning or late in the afternoon when no one's around, or off season. That's when we come. That's when we usually do these, is off season, when you're not competing with people. I don't feel real comfortable with doing beaches when there's a lot of people on it. We usually go early in the morning, like the beach. Our beach is open at 8 o'clock. We'll be first in line at 8. And then just around 10 o'clock, the people start coming in, and they're actually coming in earlier, but when it gets where there's a lot of people starting to lay up, we don't feel comfortable, so we just move on. So we get a couple hours in, but it's fun. All right, so here, this is a new challenge. I haven't posted this to the group yet, and this is for you. If you were looking at this based on what we said, point out a few things with the mouse. This is like a little channel. So you see that it's actually kind of cool. You see the boats going back and forth through this little channel here. It's got a causeway. It looks like a causeway on either side. There's a beach. Looks like an RV parking area. You've got over here some volleyball setups going, pretty cool. And this is your towel line all along in here. And then you got some people out in the water. So I guess my question is, you were detecting, where would you go? Think about it, and I'll give you the opinion in a second. All right, so you're looking at this, thinking to yourself, okay, it's a plan. You got to have a plan in mind where you're going to spend your time. You don't got a lot of time, where you're going to go. So I marked a few of the treasure areas that I would definitely want to hit. As I said, if you're in the water, if you're a person that's doing water detecting, there's always going to be stuff in the water. People, that's where they drop stuff. I mean, you know, you got wet hands, you go in the water, they got suntan lotion on them, their hands get cold in the water, stuff falls off. Greatest yields for rings, definitely going to be in the water. People have coins in their pocket, they start swimming, playing around, they're going to fall out. But the jewelry, if you're looking for rings, that's where it's going to be. That gentleman I showed you, the Gamechanger, that's where he spends most of his time. I would say 90% of his time is in the water. Now, he doesn't go underwater. He's just, waiting, but he's in the water. Next over here, I put a treasure chest on these just to make it, pick it out a little bit. But this would be your line. This would be your, and we'll talk about lines and how to hit lines when you're doing them, but that would be your towel line. And then this is your recreation parking area. Okay, people coming in off the parking area. They're obviously camping here. This whole area in front here is a lot of activity. People leaving from here, going to the beach and going back to their vehicles. And then, like I said, this is the sports area. This is the volleyball. You can see over here a bunch of people playing. They got to be losing stuff. You know they're losing stuff. So I didn't put anything here. This big wide open area. I mean, that doesn't mean there's nothing there, but I don't think you're going to find a whole lot there. I didn't put anything down over here along this. It's nice and scenic in its viewing, but there's no real picnic area here. There's no real activity going on. So treasure it's going to be where it's found, is where the action is, where the activities are. That's where you're going to find it. So hopefully that was the same view that you had of this field. All right, so patterns. It's interesting, this shot. I took it from a YouTube video. I referenced him at the end because I think he has a good channel. And he has some good stuff, and I just elaborated on it a little bit. It's kind of funny. A friend of mine just came back from Florida, and he said he was down there on any given day. He was like 6 or 7 guys hitting the beach, or ladies hitting the beach. It was just like crazy busy, and it was pretty clean. Another guy told me he hunted for a couple hours with very few signals, not even garbage. So these beaches get hit pretty hard. But there's 3 different things going on here that I wanted to point out. We got this guy up in the top, and he's hitting the dry sand. He's dragging the scoop behind him, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So there's a treasure area. We got the guy waiting over here in the water. He's in the water, and he's, potential for treasure, as I said, rings for sure. And then we got the guy in between. He's between the wet sand and the water and the dry sand. So he's at this high tide mark between that and the water, and that's what he's detecting. And we're going to talk about all of these a little bit more. This gentleman, as I was saying, you can see he's going back and forth. And I just wanted to show you, it's a technique, and you may have heard of it before, but if you didn't, it's worth mentioning. It's called gridding. And with the gridding, a friend of mine does this all the time. He brings a long-handled scoop, and he drags his scoop behind him. And when he's dragging it behind, you notice it makes a mark in the line. And then he goes up one way, comes down the other way, goes up another way. So you can keep track of what you've done and what you've hit. I've used just my footprints and follow my shoes. Like I have a unique pattern on the bottom of my shoe, so I know where I've been, and that works too. But it's kind of interesting. I was kidding him around because I was following his trail the other day, and I found a quarter he missed, and he says, "Oh, I was going too fast." But if you do it like this and you're gridding, you're going to cover areas more thoroughly and less likely to hit. And then when you do something like this, okay, you got to go up and down like this, but you would then cross it the other way. And then if you want to be really thorough, you can cross it a third way diagonally, especially if you get an area that's productive. And we'll talk more about that. For me, with the long-handled scoop, I find it's better having it behind me. So then I'm not getting a signal off of the scoop itself on the coil. I have had issues when I held it out in front where getting some weird signals. So having it behind is not a bad thing. He drags the other end instead of his scoop end. He drags the other end. Whatever works for you, but it just is to mark it. So this is called gridding or making lines, as they call it. You may have seen this before. A zigzag pattern. If you go to a new area and you're not sure where your targets are going to be located, especially in a large beach area. And what we're going to be talking about is that there's going to be certain areas where there's a concentration of fines. It seems to be a natural phenomenon that happens at the beaches as a result of the tides and currents and everything affecting the sand. To find those areas, what you need to do is kind of like screen the beach. So a common method, they call it the zigzag pattern. So I just try to draw it here. And you can kind of see he was dragging his scoop in that pattern too. So these are like large V's, and we'll talk about the difference between large V's and small V's and I's, but this is a zigzag pattern. You do this to begin with because you're looking for some signals. You're looking for what they call a patch. The patch is going to be what's going to be telling you that there might be some finds to be found, that it's worth sticking around that area. So this area, this is what they call the swirl pattern. So after you're finding a target, you've located a target, you start at that target, and then you start working your way out. It's like a spiral movement, and you keep going wider and wider and wider, because what tends to happen is targets tend to congregate. And when they congregate, staying in that one area, staying with that patch, you're going to find multiple targets. I'll show you some pictures of that as we go through. It can be a very productive technique. So you've got your lines, you've got your zigzags, now you've got your swirl pattern. And so how do you read this beach? Like if you were to see this, where would you go? That's a big beach and there's a lot of ground to cover. So that's the reason that you'd want to use that zigzag pattern and cover more of that beach. And a good thing to do is, like, say you start where your car is, where you came onto the beach. So you zigzag one way away from you going down the beach. Then on your way back to your car, you zigzag in the opposite direction. So you're making X's. So from a zigzag, you're making an X. That just covers more ground. And the more ground you cover, it's all about getting your coil over the target. You get your coil over the target, that's the secret, that's the key. It's a little bit of luck, a little bit of mojo, but once you get that area and you start getting targets, you can increase your productivity. So one of the things is, this talks about like water and effect of water drop zone. The waves actions and the tides and storms in particular play havoc with the beach, and the beach is constantly changing. So what's maybe productive one day will be not productive the next day. But that makes it interesting because every time you go to the beach, you might be coming to something different, something new. So don't give up. Like if you go one day and you're not finding anything, it could be like night and day the next day. So don't give up on it, especially like after a storm or seriously low tides or high tides that are playing havoc with the beach. Really good times to go. So watching your water lines. I like to do dry sand. It's just easy to sift. A lot of people do. But again, you know, it's all about productivity. Dry sand, you're counting on people losing stuff that are in the water, they're on their blanket. So it happens, you know, obviously, people put suntan lotion on or they take their rings off because they don't want to wear them into the water, and then they flip them off their blanket. So I found rings in the dry sand, and it's a lot easier, I think, for digging. But the vast majority are going to be in the water or in the wet sand, because that's where people would lose the stuff. And where you find the treasure is where they have lost it. So this was an idea for that big area on the beach. Running a V pattern, what you're looking for is a patch, and that's where you get multiple targets. They may not all be treasure targets. They may be trash, there may be coins, there could be jewelry, but it's where things are being deposited by the actions of the currents and the tides, and it seems to congregate in certain areas. So when you find something like this little patch, now you know that's where you're going to start doing your circular swirls, and really hit that area very hard, because you know this is going to be productive. And this was a good example of it. This gentleman dug over here. He had a pull tab, so that began his swirls, his circles. He kept working his way out, and guess what? His next hit, right next to it, this beautiful silver ring. So it's just proof to the pudding. You get that signal, you get that into that patch. If there's one target, even junk, you could find some good stuff in there. So don't give up on it. That's a good example of doing the swirl and how it paid off. All right, here's another little assessment for you. Here's a jetty. You got beaches on either side. Which one do you hunt? So think about it for a second. Look at those beaches. What do you see going on? And this is called reading the beach or analyzing the beach, and it's all part of the game. So you looked at this now, you can see the beach on the left, to the left side of this jetty. Looks like it's a lot of new sand here, right? It's piled up really high up to this jetty. It's very high. But look at this side, on the right-hand side, you can see that this is wet sand, and it's actually cut low. It's low below the jetty. So there's been some sand that's been washed out here. The good thing there is that any targets that might be found are probably going to be under that deeper sand, because now this is covering them over. This sand is, you know, covering all that stuff over. There might be stuff here, but it's going to be really deep. But over here, you got a good chance, a better chance. This is increasing your odds. That's what this is, putting the odds in your favor. And the right-hand side, the odds would be much better in your favor. So going to and from, this is what I mentioned before. So you hit one area, you go one direction of these. On your way back, it's like to and fro. So you notice that by doing the X, you're really covering a lot more ground. So that's the X pattern. Reading a cut. This is something that you hear people talk about quite a bit. And actually, one of the beaches that I frequent, the cuts are just amazing. We're talking, this looks like just a few inches, but I've seen cuts, you know, feet, you know, you could serious cuts that come up in the beach, especially after storms. What happens is all that sand gets pushed out or carried out. Now, as the tides go back and forth, it kind of gets filled in again. But again, you're trying to get down deep. So when you see something like this, a cut like this, usually people will do right at the cut. But again, what you want to do is that pattern. You want to do that V pattern to see where things are. And for whatever reason, I don't have any physics of it necessarily, but it seems it's been most productive like 10 to 15 feet away from the cut, not right into the cut, but away from the cut. Maybe things as they're being drawn out just get deposited there. There has to be some physical explanation for it, but I wouldn't rule this out because you could find anything in between here. But doing that V pattern I mentioned would be the ideal. So this is that V pattern. So you're going down the beach, you're doing your V, all of a sudden you start getting targets. It could be garbage, it could be a ring, it could be coin. But now you've got something here. Now this is indicating that this is a patch. You found like a really productive area. Then you're going to stop. And this is when you're going to start doing your concentration. Now, what could happen, and this is something a little bit different, you might find what they call lines. They call them coin lines or ring lines, but what happens is the targets are scattered along, well, it's almost, one of the gentlemen said it's like a scatter plot. It's like above and below, but if you look at all your holes, and that's kind of cool to look at afterwards, is look at where your holes are. If they're all forming a line, then you've established what they call a coin line. If they're in a circular pattern, then it's a patch. So the coin line versus the patch, that's the difference. Patching continuation. So here's something here. If you look, like I was saying, just go back and you can see where all the holes were dug. Over here, all this disturbed sand, it was flat at one time, you know, it was wet. But now you can see there's a ton of holes here. All of these are targets that were recovered. Okay, they weren't all rings, obviously, they're coins, and there's garbage in here too, but there were a lot of concentrated targets. So after they exhausted this, they started working their way down. They wanted to know, was there a coin line associated with this, or was it just a really huge patch? And it turned out that the patch was isolated to here, but as they went down the beach, and it doesn't show you on this slide, but down the beach, these lines continued, and that's where the coins were lining up. And that was the coin line. So you got an example here of what I was talking about, a patch, and then the establishment of a coin line. It's really cool. So again, this is what I was talking about before. This is from left to right. Say you're going down the beach this way. So you're going up and down, you're doing your V's. So you hit your target area. Now you're in your patch. So you started your patch. So now you start going in your circular. You do your swirls. You exhaust the targets in that swirl. So now you want to know, there weren't any targets down over here. Is there anything on the other side? So what you know, this is a productive area. So what you're going to do is do a tight pattern here. So you tighten up your V's, okay? The tight V's, sometimes people call them I's, but you just tighten them up. And then you might start finding a coin line or a treasure line that's near this. And you just watch again where the targets are being found. And that's where you want to stay. Remember, all this other area, if you were detecting it, there's no targets there, it'd be wasting your time. So you've got to look for these patches. If you want to be a game changer beach guy, beach woman, that's what you got to do. All right, go to where the treasure lies. That's the bottom philosophy. These are some of the rings this guy found. Just crazy, crazy. All right, great link for metal detecting beaches. It's here. Just do metal detecting New York beaches is the guy. I respect this guy immensely. He's posted a bunch. He's got a great channel. He's really down to earth, easy to talk, easy to listen to for sure. And he's got a lot of valuable information. So I would shout out him for this. And thank you for watching this. And I hope you got a few tips out of it. I'm going to take some of these excerpts and put them on the Facebook group, my group. Check that out. Here's my commercial for that. It's the Treasure Hunters Game Changers. And we're a Facebook group. It's a private group, but if you just apply and you agree to the rules, you're in. We're growing quickly, and we have this pirate theme. So a lot of times people tease me because I have like a pirate jewelry on and I've got all this pirate stuff. But it's just for fun. And it's not because we plunder. It's because we're into adventure and we like to do stuff. And it's not just beaches. It's everything, fields, woods, you name it, parks. We have all kinds of different, we changed the name to Treasure Hunters because we have prospectors, bottle collectors, all kinds of treasure hunters of all shapes and sizes, forms, types of things that they're into from all over the world. So it's like really cool. And we do these every couple of weeks, meet and greets, which is just a way to get to make some friends. And to me, I'll be honest with you, that's the real treasure of this, is making the friends along the way. So hope to see you out there. Happy hunting. Coils, I always say, coils to the sand and soil. May the wind be at your back and the tides in your favor. And I'll see you out there. Take care. Check out the next video, or I've got some other ones posted if you're interested. Hit subscribe. I'd appreciate it. We're just starting off and we're trying to grow. So thanks a lot. Take care.